Greetings all. Welcome to Aquarian Diary. I'm your host, John Irving. It is June 1st, 2023. I'm going to present something here today that I have not done before, and that is to share a significant dream that I had very recently. In fact, it was yesterday from the day I'm recording this. Dreams and dreaming are my thing. I've mentioned that here before, but in case that's not familiar to someone, I have very vivid and profound dreams that are often precognitive. That's my psychic gift. I've had them since I was a very young child. They can be quite prophetic. They are extremely vivid and lifelike, like I said, and I am often very lucid, meaning that I kind of know that I'm having a dream, and I will be paying attention to what's going on, knowing that I will want to remember it when I wake up, that it may be important. And the really important dreams will literally wake me up, and then I will make notes and write things down. Now, I haven't shared those here previously because often they're very personal, but once in a while, I have ones that are bigger picture, like the one I had yesterday. In fact, the spiritual name I was given pertains to dreaming, so it's a big deal for me. I should also explain that there's nothing I can do to precipitate these kinds of dreams. They just happen spontaneously. So this is new for me, sharing dreams publicly, and I'll just try and describe the dream, and we can see how you interpret it. I have had other important dreams that I have thought about sharing here, so we'll see how this is received. So, in this dream, I was in a fairly large room, not a huge room. It seemed like an old community hall that you would find in a rural setting. I just had the vibe or feeling that it was out in the country. So the room was maybe like 40 feet long by 25 feet wide kind of thing. Hardwood floors, paned windows, white walls. The sun was high. It wasn't cold. So it definitely felt like at least spring, if not early summer or summer. And I had set up all my computer monitors horizontally, one to the next, all the way along the top of one of the walls. I spend a lot of time on my computer, so I have, currently I have a 32-inch monitor, so I use pretty big monitors. And you can get ones these days that are even 42 inches. So I had maybe 8 or 10 large monitors, all horizontally fixed to the wall, going across one of the walls. And it felt kind of like that this was my command center. This was going to be me observing what's going on in the world. And there was someone there, and I was kind of joking with them saying, hey, what do you think of my monitor setup? And we were laughing about it because I had so many monitors. Most people don't have that many monitors. What do monitors do? They're like a lens onto the world when you're connected to the internet and you're reading things, right? So there I was, and I was kind of proud of myself and chuckling, thinking about this setup. And there was nobody there that I knew personally. There was no people from my past or anything. There was just this guy I was talking to. And then some other guys come along, and they're kind of they're all white. They're all Caucasian. And they're kind of alpha kind of guys, or pretending to be younger than me. But, it was casual, so it wasn't like I was intimidated or anything. And then one of the guys turns out to be kind of like the leader or real alpha for this group of guys. And there's another fellow who is very muscular and very macho, with tattoos and everything. And they're kind of joking around, and they get into kind of a wrestling sort of competition sort of match, and, to see who's the strongest. And it turns out that the leader guy is much more skilled than the guy who challenged him, the brawny, muscular guy. So he was kind of put in his place in the pecking order. And the guy who won that competition, I had the vibe that he had had military training. He had that air about him, very confident and self-assured. And so it was announced that they were forming a committee, a group of men who were going to make sure that the community was safe and secure, and that they were going to start doing things like patrols, and that he was organizing training classes for the other guys. And again, it's all just males. They're all Anglo-Saxon, Caucasian males. In the beginning, I'm kind of like, okay, what's the threat? Like we're out in the country. What are we worried about? And it seemed that they just were concerned that, there might be like an influx of people from the cities or from outside that they needed to protect themselves from. And so it started to feel more like a kind of paramilitary thing. Like it wasn't the government, it wasn't the military, it wasn't the police, it was just local people taking on this role that, normally the authorities would do. It had a vigilante sort of vibe to it. And I'm kind of like, okay, huh. And then it was announced that the first training session was imminent and that we were all expected to attend and participate. And, this was going to involve physical training and all that stuff. And I'm kind of going like, okay, what? I'm like, where is this going? It's because it started to feel like you didn't really have a choice, like that you were going to be expected to participate in this. So I started to get very uncomfortable with this. I'm kind of like, I don't really want to be involved in some kind of weird paramilitary thing. It's starting to feel kind of fascistic or authoritarian, very militaristic. So then after this was announced, I was chatting with one of the other fellows and I said, I don't really like where this is going. Like, I can just see where this is heading. This is kind of like fascistic. It's got a fascistic vibe about it. I can just see where this is going to go. It's going to start out with just, we're doing some basic training and, you'll be expected to participate, and then it'll get more rigid and more structured. And then over time, people are going to get indoctrinated, and then they're going to get more and more sort of paramilitary. And I could just sense where this was going. So I said to the guy, I was explaining this, and I said, I think I got to get the hell out of here. I don't really want to be here, because what'll happen is you'll get stuck in that. It'll go down this path, and then you won't be able to get out because you'll be expected to follow the group. It's very tribalistic. And it was all men. It was all just men, masculine, and very white. So by the end of the dream, I was like, I have to get the hell out of here fast. And I said to the other fellow I was talking to, you got to get out of here too. If I were you, because he was questioning the same kinds of things I was questioning. And I'm like, you don't want to stick around. You want to get out of here. So it started to get concerning, in other words, and I felt like it was time sensitive. So then I have to go get my stuff, and I go to the door at the end of the room to go upstairs, and there's no stairs. I have to climb up to the next level by grabbing the door jamb and sort of shimmying myself up, which I can do. But the other guy who had challenged the leader comes along and just, he's really brawny, and he just grabs the floor and just jumps up like it's no big deal. And I'm kind of like, huh. And then I have to do it again to get to the second level. So there was like no stairs. It required a lot of physical strength and agility just to get up to the next level. I'll explain that in a minute. So then I woke up thinking like, holy shit, this is weird. It had the vibe of starting out under the guise of one thing and then going down this road towards authoritarianism and fascism. And it made me think about what happened, in Germany a century ago, or Spain under Franco. When I woke, I started to think about this, and I was like, yeah, it was all just masculine, hierarchical, and the hierarchy was all about the strongest, who could fight and dominate the others. Very base. To me, this kind of behavior is blatant overcompensation. It's rooted in insecurity and demonstrates immaturity. It's ironically obvious to a lot of people, except the ones engaged in that kind of behavior. And it was interesting too because it was set in a rural setting. And I have been considering, should I live in the country or should I live in an urban area? Because I can do both. I like the country because it's quiet and peaceful and you're surrounded by nature. But urban areas have a lot of conveniences and you don't have to drive everywhere and stuff like that. So I'm always having this debate. But there's another factor, which is that a lot of the right-wing stuff is going on in more rural areas. Like in the States, it's the red states and places like that, whereas people in more urban areas tend to be more liberal and progressive. That's just a trend, and the same thing is happening here in Canada. So I had some concerns about living in the country where you tend to have people who are more radically right-wing. And of course, my own personal worldview is very progressive, so I would clash with that. So that has been a bit of a concern. And in this case, the whole dream was set in a very nice rural setting. So there's that part of it. And then the other part of it, all of this really brash and brazen hypermasculinity made me think about the shift of the North Node into Aries. On July 17th of 2023, the North Node will shift into Aries from Taurus through January 11th of 2025, 18.6 months. And when I had this dream and I woke, I realized that it pertains to that because it fits perfectly into the narrative that I explained in the episode that I devoted to this topic. I did a whole 21 or 22 minute long video on this topic, which I published on May 10th of this year. North Node transit Aries. South Node transit Libra. The ruler of Libra is Venus. That's a feminine energy. The ruler of Aries is Mars, very masculine energy, and all about competition and even combat in its more base expression. Think of the gladiator during the heyday of the Roman Empire. That image or mythology epitomizes many aspects of the Aries or Mars nature. And of course, a lot of that occurred during the age of Aries, which preceded the age of Pisces, which we are just finishing now. It may not manifest so brutally now, but there's still that notion of the lone warrior in combat against all odds, where there's only one sole champion. It's a solitary pursuit. It's not a team-based thing, really, in its purest form. So, like the part of the dream where we have to go upstairs and there's no stairs, and you have to be strong and physical, like somebody older or somebody with any kind of injury or whatever just literally wouldn't be able to get upstairs. It was only somebody who was really strong and fit that could do it. So that symbolizes moving up the levels of the hierarchy, that it's going to be very physical. So the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, this is a metaphor for the North Node about to transit Aries. It's effectively what I described in my episode on this, which I encourage you to listen to. I found the whole thing quite shocking because it was so in your face. It wasn't subtle at all. There was no women in the scene at all. None, not one. There were no senior citizens. There were no children. It was 20s, 30s, 40-year-old men, which is kind of the Mars energy. And so it validates my episode on the North Node in Aries. And it also informed me personally a little bit about where maybe I should live and maybe where I shouldn't. As much as I love nature in the country, I don't want to be surrounded by that kind of energy or wrapped up in it. Now, the way astrology works is that for most people, this stuff is entirely unconscious. They do not even know that they're being influenced by these kinds of energies or that it's affecting their worldview or experience. It just occurs. And lately, I've been reading a lot also about the rise of these kinds of movements, the far right, and so on. It's a trend that I think will only increase in some ways when the North Node moves into Aries. It's also possible that what this dream is describing is the transit of Neptune through Aries, which I have also talked about. That transit commences in early 2025, all the way through early 2039. I'm mentioning this because when I was a young child, 5, 6, 7, I started having visions about these biblical, epic environmental issues that we would be facing in the future. So I was decades ahead of what is now coming to pass. I didn't really start to understand the full causes of that until probably the 1990s, many, many years later. So it's possible that this vision of this very sort of militaristic masculine future is further out than just the North Node transiting Aries. Although, when the North Node finishes transiting Aries, will be just before Neptune goes into Aries. So the two almost, within a few weeks, almost overlap. So, yeah. Another thing I want to say is that I think I'm sharing this with people because those of us who are more liberal or progressively oriented may be thinking about, should I move? Where should I live? And this is a factor that maybe people are not considering as much as they should, which is the cultural norms and proclivities of the communities that they are going to be integrating with. That is something that I think should be considered, and that is why I think I'm sharing this. There are a lot of misinformed people out there. Worse than that, there are a lot of willfully ignorant people out there. And even worse still, there are a lot of belligerently ignorant people out there who take pride in their ignorance. You do not want to be affiliated with these people. They are going to be in for a very rough ride because reality conflicts with their beliefs and attitudes. This is simply a fact. So ideally, you are in the vicinity of people who are not like that, who are instead grounded in reality and not delusional. So I wanted to share that with you for what it's worth. Finally, I am presently in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada, and the province is having record-setting wildfires. I am personally not too far from that, but I am in a safe area, although it is devastating. It's never been so dry here at this time of year before. It's quite alarming. This year, sea surface temperatures off the east coast of North America have been as high as 14 degrees Celsius, off the charts, hotter than the 1981 to 2011 average, which is just absolutely astonishing. So the upcoming hurricane season poses looming threats as well. This is the kind of thing I have personally talked about on my channel a lot before. Hopefully this is a bit of a wake-up call and people will start putting our safety and security ahead of profits. And we can get on with how to mitigate these kinds of things from happening in the future. If you're interested in a reading or mini reading, I'll put a link to that in the description as well. Obviously, a mini reading is very focused and short and not interactive, whereas a full reading is typically much longer and broader in scope and involves a lot of discussion, which is often very helpful and important. The June mini reading will be on the theme of the North Node beginning to transit Aries in July, with discounts for monthly YouTube members. I'll be announcing that soon. You can also support this channel by becoming a monthly member on YouTube. I look forward to your thoughts about my dream, another experiment for me. I am also going to be starting a new Dreams playlist on YouTube. Thanks for everything, all the best, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon, as always. Bye for now.